Chechi, Herbert's 100 harem. All right, call the police. We have a body here. Water arumenta, female. Skin color green, hair bright blue. Sufficient time has passed for the arumenta effect on her hair to fade, suggesting she has been dead for multiple hours at minimum. Physical age early to mid-20s. Pool of partially dried blood visibly disturbed to suggest the body was moved shortly after death, but not immediately. Clothing is dark, predominantly dark blue, and in the semi-frilled Haber style that was in Season 3 seasons ago. He says into his communicator as he walks around the body and squats down, sending a picture of the deceased's face now. He takes a picture and moves around her again, refusing to step in the blood or disturb the body, but examining it closely. The lethal wound has a significant heat profile with burnt clothing near the edge. Damage inconsistent with even the mildest plasma weapons, likely a laser. Wound is at a downward angle, shows signs of being shot at point-blank range. Potentially an execution. His initial assessment given he puts his communicator into record mode and tucks it into his jacket pocket. It's his 4th body cam at this rate, but it's also his obvious one he can give to the police. That was professional. How many times have you done this? Chitter asks. I've had outright training to handle this. If a contact is killed, I have to be able to ascertain what killed them, why, and who did it. He answers. And what can you say? She asks him. The why is obvious. This woman was responsible for the dead drop, and someone that the drop was owed to or held her responsible for, it was not happy. Now, as to who that woman was, they were either a taller species, but not extremely so. Our victim here is of average height, so the attack came from above. The lack of larger steam explosions means the laser was relatively low power. So putting that together, it was a low-power handheld laser gun practically pressed against her from above. So a taller race, or a smaller one using a vehicle or flying. The one category we can more or less count out are races the same general size. How someone could try and make a show of it? Chitter pokes at his theory. She would have tried to turn, unless there is the idea that there were others. If someone held her still, or had her on her knees, then this could be someone of her own race. We can't tell without further investigation, and I've done what I can without stepping on the toes of the local police, he says. You're not going to just leave it, though, are you? Of course not, but that was just an initial observation. The next step is to inform Matilda of what's happened and get her to help me cordon off this chunk of the scrapyard as the police get moving. Herbert says. Do you mind watching her, please? Can you watch over the area in case some scrap hunter starts poking around and does something dumb? Right, that's easy enough. Chitter agrees and he salutes her. And what if someone arrives when you're gone? Cooperate with the police, be polite with civilians, and stall for time while avoiding offending any criminals. Sound easy? It does, she agrees and gets another salute before he scrambles off. Much, much faster than his frame would imply. The moment he's out of sight, a communicator starts going off. Chitter checks her own, but it's silent. The sound is a standard factory setting ring, coming from the corpse. Paralyzed with indecision, she just lets it ring out before an automated message declares the communicator's owner cannot come to the phone and requesting they leave a message. But that should not be playing audibly. It should be a recording playing only for the caller. I can see you, Wimparis. Pick up the communicator before I get upset. A low voice growls out from the other end of the line and the message then ends. Then the phone starts ringing again. Chitter slowly reaches for the communicator and pulls it out of the victim's pocket. Very good. Now listen to me and listen well. I have a railgun with a compressed tritite slug aimed right at your head. No amount of axiom will save you from this attack. The round will be supersonic as well. Unless you have reflexes that make rabbis seem like they're non-responsive, you're going to do exactly what I tell you or die. Do you understand? A voice asks, and Chitter lets out a terrified whining sound. I'll take that as a yes. Now, if you want to get out of this alive, you're going to do 2 things for me. Understand? Yes. Very good. If you cooperate, then in a single minute you will be off my list and I'll never bother you again. Sound fair? Yes. She mutters before the device is suddenly pulled away from her. Hello? Hello, hello! Who is this and why are you scaring Miss Chitter? Herbert asked, having returned under cloak, and at a dead sprint the moment he had seen the visual feed in Matilda's security center. Child, I have no idea where you... I came from my mother, or at least she says so. I don't remember. He says to buy some time. There was no way that Chitter would be as intimidated as she clearly was without some kind of threat. So he's scanning the area hard when he spots it. An odd repetition in a nearby building's is brickwork that matches up flawlessly with the wall around it. If not for the inconsistent weathering, it would have been much harder to see, but now he clearly sees through the cloaking field. "Could you please hand the communicator back to Miss Chitter?" the woman asks. "No," he answers immediately. "Why not?" "Don't wanna." He pokes at her as he scans the area around him further. He also draws out a sub-vocalization patch the same color as his skin and places it on his throat. "Hey lady, why is your voice so low? Are you sick? Do you need a doctor?" "I do not need a doctor," the woman states. During this, Herbert whispers, "C.S. says." "Are you sure? It sounds like you've been drinking dirt." He says, "Oh wait, do you know how that tastes? I would think that dirt is dirty, right? Dirty dirt." Code word given a snapshot is taken from his body cams and being passed off to the incoming reinforcements. He has no doubt they'll find whoever this woman is. "Child, I have used up my patience with you. Cute you may be, but I am having a serious adult talk with Miss Chitter." "But adult talks are boring," he protests. Now he's just stalling for time. "I have a gun pointed right at her, right now. If you do not give the communicator back to her, I will kill her." "Are you really sure you want to do that?" he asks. "Do not test me on this, you little—" There is a bang as she's cut off by Herbert, quick drawing and firing his pistol directly at her. He couldn't actually tell where she was, so his aim is ever so slightly off. But she's been forced out of her sniper's position out of fear of her own life. He steadies his aim and points it to where the cloaking distortion ever so slightly moved. "That was a warning shot. Now it's time for you to start talking, miss. Who are you? And why do you think it's wise to do these things?" "Who are you?" "I asked first. I'm also quite willing to shoot first, as you just saw. You can touch me, and I can touch you. Is this really what you want to deal with? Are you being paid enough to do this?" he asks her, stalling for more time. He can see the slight flickers of his agents move into position. Several take up firing positions, but a pair of them creep into the building the sniper is in. "We have her. Engage?" his earpiece whispers. "Capture if possible," he whispers. There is a sudden scream of protest from the other side of the communicator, and he hears the sound of duct tape and zip ties being used. He gets an objective achieved confirmation from his agents, and he nods. He then turns off the communicator and turns back to Chitter. "It's safe now. We got her." "What just happened?" "I stalled for enough time for the—" "Oh, this is an awkward time for the police to show up. Mind waiting a bit on the answer so I only have to answer once?" Herbert asks. "Can I have a very simple rundown first? I was stalling for time while I got some agents in place to take her out." "They got her," he says, and she nods. "All right, that's enough for now." "Thank you," she says as she adjusts herself to try and calm down. "Did you have to do it that way?" "It wouldn't have worked so well if I didn't look like an impertinent brat stepping into the middle of something way too big for them," Herbert says as a police cruiser swoops down. He waves to the officer leaving the vehicle. "Hello, Miss Policewoman. You got here quick." "I was finishing a traffic stop a short ways away," the Platinum officer says as she walks up and takes in the scene. A pair of drones take off from her cruiser and begin scanning the area. "Now, have you two interfered with the crime scene in any manner? Furthermore, how did you come across it? Officer Stouthide? Am I reading that right? Trenokin is not my first language," Herbert asks, looking at her ID tag. "You read that correctly. Who are you, young man?" Officer Stouthide asks, and he pulls out his ID to hand to her. "Agent Jameson of the Undaunted Intelligence Division." "That's correct." "I am Sister Chitter Dropshell," Chitter says. "We're here because we have concerns on how a small group of children got their hands on dangerous weapons. They claimed to find them in a sack here, and when we came to investigate, there was a dead body." "I see," Officer Stouthide says, imputing that into her communicator. "And have either of you touched the crime scene in any way?" "I was forced to," Chitter admits. "Forced?" Officer Stouthide asks, and Herbert holds out the communicator to her. That communicator was in the poor woman's pocket. It started ringing, and when it went to message, It began broadcasting it out loud. Then there was an implied threat towards me if I did not answer the next call. So I did. "And what happened when you answered the call?" Officer Stouthide asked. "I was told that there was a railgun with a compressed tri-tight slug aimed at my head, and if I didn't cooperate, I would die," Chitter says in a haunted tone. Herbert then whispers for the poor woman to have at least one session with a professional to make sure she can get over the dread and other side effects to finding out just how at risk your life could be in at any moment. "Then what happened?" Officer Stouthide presses. Before things could get any further, Agent Jameson here returned and took the phone to distract the sniper. When she began to threaten him, he fired off his weapon and clearly frightened the woman. Roughly a minute later, he reported her as captured, and then a minute later you arrived. "This just happened?" Officer Stouthide asks. "Yes, in fact, here come my agents with the woman now. Miss Dropshell, please find a place to sit down so you can relax and decompress from this horrible situation. You undaunted. How old are you really?" 30. "Are you a trained and legal adult?" "Yes." "Are you capable of continuing this question and answer session?" "Yes." He answers and she nods before her communicator gives off a chime. "My files say that this is Ellie Torrent, small-time gangster and petty thief. No serious convictions, a few minor brawls, petty theft of course, and a few mischief charges. So someone in the gang scene and likely disposable enough that when the dead drop she was looking after got raided, she was executed," Herbert says, and Stouthide gives him a look. "And how did you draw that conclusion?" she demands, and he begins explaining his earlier observations, followed by filling in what was in the dead drop, who took it, and what he was doing here. "And the shooter? What has happened to her?" Stouthide asks, and Herbert points to where the slight distortion was. "The cloaking field is gone now, and it reveals that the brickwork has been vandalized with a small hole in the wall. His shot must have hit the bricks." He clucks to himself. He was so sure it was a balcony. Ah, well, it just means he has more to do. "She was over there. I managed to distract her long enough for my people to get her, and here they are," he says as an unmarked airvan descends from above. "I assume you'll be wanting our shooter?" "I will," Officer Stouthide says as the van descends and the side opens. "One shooter, as requested, sir," the gray-furred rabbi's man says with a wide smile. "Thank you, Operative Bugs. Now then, miss, is there anything you'd like to say?" "I want my lawyer," the gunner says with a twitching eye. Clearly she's not handling this well. "You do have a right to an attorney," Officer Stouthide admits.